The mug sat untouched. Steam curled gently into the cold morning air like a secret rising toward the ceiling, invisible yet heavy with everything unspoken. The kitchen was quiet, too quiet for a house that once echoed with laughter, the scent of cinnamon toast, the rustle of newspapers, and the lazy sound of footsteps padding toward warmth. But now there was only him, and the coffee he brewed every morning just the way she liked it. 2 sugars, no cream. In the same porcelain cup with a faded sunflower she bought from a thrift store because it looked like it had survived something. Michael Lancaster stood by the sink, fingers wrapped around the edge of the marble counter as if anchoring himself to a life that no longer made sense. His tailored shirt was crisp, his tie perfect, but his eyes, those fierce CO eyes that once commanded boardrooms, were hollow. Outside, the rain came down in sheets, tapping against the glass like a persistent memory refusing to be ignored. Today made exactly 6 years since she left. No note, no warning, just vanished into the world beyond their brownstone, carrying with her all the questions he was never brave enough to ask. He turned to face the table. Her chair remained slightly pulled out, the way it always had been. The ghost of her presence lingered like perfume long faded, like a memory that refused to let go. A gentle knock at the door stirred him from his daze. He wasn't expecting anyone. He rarely did. But something in the rhythm of the knock, it wasn't firm like a courier's or polite like a neighbor's. It was hesitant, soft, like someone unsure if they belonged. Michael opened the door slowly, and froze. A girl stood there, no more than 5 or 6 years old, soaked in the rain, holding a small note in her trembling hands. Her eyes were the color of stormy skies, his eyes, and they widened at the sight of him, as if she recognized something she wasn't supposed to understand yet. "This is for you," she said, her voice barely a whisper, then thrust the note into his hand and turned to run. He blinked, still rooted, the paper growing damp in his palm. He opened it. 3 words. "She's not gone." His heart kicked against his chest. He spun, but the girl had already disappeared into the misty street, swallowed by rain and time. The note trembled in his fingers, and so did he. In a haze he turned back inside, the warmth of the room now mocking. He reached for his phone with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking, pulled up a contact long deleted but never forgotten. Her name still lit up the screen like a wound. Ava. He never stopped loving her. Never stopped searching, even after everyone told him to move on. After the press declared it a scandal. After his board questioned his sanity. After he stood alone in that talk show chair and whispered on live television, "I would give everything to understand why she left." And now in his hand was the first real answer. She's not gone. The question wasn't if she was alive. It was why she never told him. Why she walked away from the life they built. And why, despite everything, he still made her coffee every morning. Michael closed his eyes, and like a film unspooling backward in his mind, it all began again. That night. That rain. That girl in the yellow raincoat and the red scarf. That cafe on West 57th where he went not for the coffee, but for the girl who served it. He gripped the note tighter and let himself fall through memory, back to where it all began, before the world tilted off its axis. Because if she was not gone, then he was going to find her. Even if it broke him. Even if she never wanted to be found. 6 years earlier, the rain had a different rhythm. It was softer then, like a lullaby whispered across the streets of Manhattan. The city moved as it always did, fast, indifferent. But in that tiny corner cafe on West 57th, time slowed down for just a moment. Ava pulled her cardigan tighter around her frame, her fingers stiff from hours of washing dishes, wiping counters, and serving regulars who never remembered her name. She had only one more shift before catching the late train home, where her mother lay sick in bed and her little sister waited for dinner that wouldn't be warm. Her world, though small, was full of people who needed her. And that was enough. The bell above the cafe door jingled as a man stepped inside, brushing raindrops from his shoulders. Ava barely looked up. The lunch rush had passed, and only 2 tables were occupied. Her co-worker Marcy had ducked into the back to take a call, leaving Ava alone to manage the counter. She grabbed a clean cup, set it beneath the espresso machine and asked without glancing up, "What can I get for you?" Silence. Then a voice, deep and unusually hesitant. "Just coffee. Black." She looked up. He was soaked, not just from the rain but something else. His eyes looked like he hadn't slept in days. Sharp suit, expensive watch, but everything about him seemed unraveling. She didn't recognize him. Not then. Not as the CEO of Lancaster Holdings. Not as the billionaire who graced the covers of Forbes and Financial Times. In that moment, he was just a man standing in the rain. She handed him the cup. Rough day. He didn't answer immediately. Then he took the cup and sat in the farthest booth without another word. Ava watched him for a moment before returning to her tasks. She wiped the counter with rhythmic care, humming an old lullaby her mother used to sing. But her eyes kept drifting back to the man in the corner. He didn't sip the coffee. He just stared at the cup like it held the answers to questions he wasn't ready to ask. She hesitated, then walked over with a tiny paper-wrapped biscotti. "On the house," she said, placing it beside him. "It won't fix whatever's broken, but it might help a little." He looked up, then really looked, and for a second something passed between them. Not attraction, not recognition, something deeper, something fragile. He nodded once. "Thank you." She smiled. "You look like you haven't had someone thank you in a while." His lips twitched just slightly. "Not sincerely, no. I hope your day gets better." And she walked away. That was it. She never asked his name. He never asked hers. And by the time Marcy returned and Ava slipped out the back door to catch her train, she'd already convinced herself she'd never see him again. But he came back. Every Thursday. Same time. Same order. Always alone. And slowly a ritual formed. He'd sit in the corner booth. She'd bring him his coffee, black, and a biscotti still on the house. They never exchanged more than a few words. But their silences grew comfortable, like a song that didn't need lyrics. She began to notice things. How he always carried a notebook but never wrote in it. How he stared out the window like he was watching something that used to be there. How he always left a tip, folded precisely, tucked under the cup, as if he wanted it to be found only by her. And he noticed her too. The way she hummed when nervous. The ink smudges on her wrist from sketching during breaks. The slight limp in her step when her shoes wore thin. Still, neither one of them crossed the line into something more. Until the night the storm came. Ava had stayed late. Marcy had left early, and Ava's last train was cancelled. She sat on the cafe floor, knees hugged to her chest, trying not to cry. Her phone buzzed with a message from her sister. "Mom's coughing again. The medicine's almost out." She didn't hear the door open, didn't see the figure standing just beyond the counter. But then there was a coat draped over her shoulders. Warm, familiar, and his voice. "Do you need a ride?" She looked up, startled. "What are you doing here?" He smiled for real this time. "Maybe I came for the biscotti." She laughed, a soft, tired sound, then nodded. He drove her home. Not in a flashy car. Not with bodyguards or assistants. Just the two of them in silence, with the city lights blurring through the windshield and a classical piano piece playing low on the radio. She didn't invite him in. He didn't ask. But before she stepped out, he handed her a small envelope. "For your mom." Inside was a check. Too much. Far too much. She ran back to return it, but he was gone. The next Thursday he didn't come. Nor the one after that. She left messages at the cafe for him. Notes. Waited outside in the rain some nights, pretending she had a reason. Nothing. 3 weeks passed before she saw him again. In a magazine. On the cover. Michael Lancaster. The untouchable billionaire. Her heart stopped. She stared at the article, the photos, the headlines. It wasn't possible. He was just a man who liked black coffee and listened to piano music in the rain. But the eyes were the same. And she realized then what she had walked away from. What she had never been meant to touch. So she left. No note. No goodbye. Because what could a girl like her possibly offer a man like him? Besides a cup of coffee and a memory too simple to survive his world. But she never forgot. And every morning she brewed a cup of coffee. 2 sugars. No cream. Just in case she ever found the courage to go back. Michael had always lived in the illusion that he was in control. From the moment he closed his first $1 million deal at 25, to standing on stages, speaking at conferences filled with power suits and ivory expectations, He believed he could shape his future like a blueprint. But no amount of power prepared him for the way one woman, with no name, no past, and no warning, would carve a space so permanent in his soul, only to vanish like a mirage when he needed her most. The morning after the storm, he returned to the cafe. She wasn't there. First, he thought it was just a schedule change. People like her didn't have fixed routines. They took shifts when they could, skipped meals to cover rent. He waited, ordered coffee from a girl he didn't recognize, sat in the same booth, stared at the empty chair across from him like a fool hoping lightning would strike twice. It didn't. By the end of that week, he knew something was wrong. He asked the manager, casually at first, but when pressed further, the man just shrugged. She left. Didn't say where. One of those types. Here today, gone tomorrow. Gone. Just like that. Michael walked out of the cafe with a pain he didn't understand. It wasn't heartbreak, not exactly. It wasn't even love. Not yet. It was the absence of something that had started to mean more than he was ready to admit. And so, he buried it. Like he'd buried other things. He returned to his tower of glass and chrome, to the boardrooms and backrooms and signature pens, to the clinking of champagne glasses and the dull ache behind his temples that never really went away. But some days, without realizing it, he'd order coffee black, and expect her to appear. Some nights, he'd hear piano music and think of her laughing at the biscotti joke. She became a ghost he kept trying to forget by pretending she never mattered. But she had. More than anyone else. Because she had looked at him and didn't see the billionaire. She didn't know about the scandal that nearly took his company under. The public relations disaster after his engagement to a senator's daughter fell apart. She didn't know that the man in front of her was a broken figure trying to hold up the mirror of perfection for the world to admire. She just saw him. And when she left, he felt more naked than he had when the media splashed his private life across headlines. Still, life moved on. Months turned to years. He rose again, rebuilt his reputation, climbed higher than ever before, but that feeling never came back. That ache in his chest stayed like a secret tattoo. He dated, flirted, attended charity galas where women with diamond-studded smiles touched his arm like he was a prize. But none of them ever handed him a cup of coffee without expecting something in return. Then came the interview. It was a late-night talk show, his first after the company's acquisition of a major tech firm. Cameras flashing, teleprompters scrolling, the usual applause. The host leaned in with a charming grin and asked, "Michael, you're one of the most eligible bachelors in the world. How is it possible no one's managed to win your heart?" Michael laughed. Polite, controlled, then paused. And for the first time something cracked. "There was someone," he said. The room grew still. He looked at the camera, but it was like he wasn't really there. "She gave me coffee. Just coffee. And in that moment, I felt more human than I had in years. Then she left. Without a word. And I've spent every day since wondering why." It went viral. The next morning, his PR team was in chaos. Headlines like "Billionaire's Mystery Girl" and "Michael Lancaster's Lost Love" flooded the internet. But Michael didn't care. Because for once, he had said the truth. And he didn't realize how much it mattered. Until the little girl showed up at his door with the note. "She's not gone." It haunted him. He stayed up that night digging through files, security footage, old cafe receipts. He called in favors, hacked into databases, turned over every stone, obsessed with the idea that she might still be out there. Alive. Watching. He didn't know what he was looking for until he saw it. A photograph. It came from a donation event his company had sponsored months ago. A community bake sale in Queens. In the background, half hidden by a crowd, was a woman in a faded red scarf, holding the hand of a little boy. His heart stopped. It was her. He enlarged the photo, scanned every pixel. She hadn't changed much. A little older, thinner, her eyes tired but bright. The boy was maybe 5. Too young to be just a friend's child. The resemblance was uncanny. The same mouth, the same nose, the same storm-colored eyes. It was like the earth shifted beneath him. He dropped the photo, backed away, breath caught in his throat. Asson. She had his son, and she never told him. He paced the room like a man on fire, rage and grief colliding in his chest. Why didn't she come back? Why didn't she tell him? Then guilt. Had he made her feel she couldn't? Had his world, the bodyguards, the headlines, the distance between their lives, scared her away? He wanted answers. Deserved them. But more than that, he wanted to see her. To see his son. To say what he should have said the night she disappeared. That she was not invisible. That she was never just a waitress. That she changed him. And maybe, just maybe, he could still make things right. So he started the search. Hired a private investigator, quiet but thorough. Followed rumors, traced old addresses. Every night he made coffee. 2 sugars, no cream. Not because he hoped she'd walk through the door, but because it was the only way to keep her close. To remind himself that what he lost was real. That somewhere out there, the woman who once gave him a cup of coffee without knowing his name was still holding on to the part of him he never gave to anyone else. And if he found her, if she let him in, he would never let her go again. The park was quiet. Early spring had just started to paint the trees with a soft hint of green, and the breeze carried the kind of chill that reminded you not everything that returns comes back the same. Michael sat alone on a wooden bench near the duck pond, the same one she had once mentioned in passing. It's the only place I feel like the city breathes slower. He had waited there every Saturday for the past 3 weeks. No calls, no press, no security. Just him and a paper cup in his hands, black coffee, 2 sugars, no cream. The first time he had only stayed an hour. Then 3. Then all day. There was something oddly comforting about the stillness. The way the world seemed to forget his name here. The way he could, just for a few moments, not be Michael Lancaster, billionaire CEO, media obsession. He could just be a man. Waiting. He didn't even know if she still came here. Maybe she had moved. Maybe she had remarried. Maybe she had burned the red scarf and buried the past like it never existed. But he had to try. He didn't deserve forgiveness. He knew that now. The years he had wasted in silence. The nights he had ignored the ache in his chest. The way he let her go, assuming life would carry on as usual. But it hadn't. Not really. Because some people don't leave quietly. They take parts of you with them and you never notice until something else breaks. A small voice drifted across the grass. "Mommy, my shoe came off." Michael looked up just in time to see a little boy trip and tumble in the field. The woman rushing toward him carried a worn canvas tote bag and wore her hair tied back in a messy knot. He didn't breathe. Not even when she knelt and brushed dirt from the boy's hands, whispering something that made the child laugh. Not even when she helped him slip his shoe back on and gave him a little push toward the swing set. It wasn't until she turned her head and their eyes met that the world tilted. Ava. The same eyes, the same breathless pause as if air itself wasn't sure what to do. She froze. So did he. Neither moved. Not at first. It was the boy who did. He wandered closer, curious, clutching a toy truck in his hand. When he reached the edge of the path, he pointed. "Mommy," he said softly. "That's him." The air shattered like glass. Michael blinked. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His heart thudded so violently he could barely hear the birds, the traffic, the spinning of the world. Ava stepped forward slowly, her eyes unreadable. There was no fury in them. No tears. Just exhaustion. And something that looked dangerously close to hope. He stood. The coffee slipped from his hands and landed silently in the grass. Neither of them spoke at first. Then he said it, the only words that didn't tremble on his tongue. "I saw the picture," he whispered. "The one from the bake sale." She nodded, almost imperceptibly. "I thought you might." There was a long silence between them, thick with years, with questions, with the memories they both tried to outrun. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. Not angry, just broken. Her gaze dropped to the ground. "Because I didn't think you'd want to know. Because your world, it was too big, too loud, and I was terrified it would swallow him. Swallow us." "You had every right to be afraid," he said. "But I would've." "You would've what?" She cut in gently. "Dropped everything? Changed your name? Moved to the suburbs with a girl you barely knew?" His voice cracked. "I would've tried." She looked up then, and for the first time he saw the pain behind her strength. "I needed you to try without knowing. Without obligation. Without expectation. I needed to know if who you were when no one was watching was real. I never stopped thinking about you," he whispered. "Never stopped hoping." "I know." The boy wandered back, now holding a dandelion. He handed it to Ava, then stared at Michael with the kind of innocence that destroys grown men. "I like your suit," he said matter-of-factly. "You look like the guy in Mommy's sketchbook." Michael knelt, slowly, cautiously, like approaching a miracle he didn't deserve. "And what's your name, little man?" The boy puffed his chest proudly. "Eli. But Mommy calls me Sunshine." Michael laughed, but his voice caught in his throat. "Sunshine, huh? That's a good name." Ava crouched beside them. "Eli," she said softly, "this is a friend." Eli tilted his head, studying him. "He looks like someone who used to be sad." Michael blinked hard. He couldn't speak. "Not right now." Ava stood, brushing off her jeans. "We come here every Saturday," she said. "Same time." "I know," Michael admitted. "So do I." They stood there, in a triangle of silence. Not healed. Not whole. But no longer running. As the sun peeked from behind the clouds, Eli tugged at Michael's sleeve. "Do you like swings?" "I think I do," he said. "Then come on." Michael looked at Ava. "Can I?" She didn't answer with words. She simply nodded once. He followed Eli to the swings, the boy chattering away about dragons and chocolate milk and how he was going to be an astronaut. Michael pushed him gently, each swing carrying the rhythm of a life he never knew he needed. When he looked back, Ava was still watching him, arms crossed but not guarded, soft. And for the first time in years, Michael didn't feel like he was chasing a ghost. He was home. He would still make her coffee every morning, and maybe someday she would drink it with him again.